Yes, I am.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tony Caravan live. The morning show. Looks like my live chat is working today. This is going to double as an introduction to me for a community I'm trying to set up on locals. And if this seems a bit confusing to both the people on locals as well as the people who've been watching my 190, I think I'm up to 193 videos, close to 60 consecutive mornings. I've been doing this for between an hour and 2 hours in length. But I'm going to give this locals thing a shot. And let me read from my description to get this best across. In a world where it becomes increasingly difficult to physically connect with like-minded individuals or people in general, the choice becomes, do I live in isolation or do I utilize the digital tools available? While I find most of the existing platforms to be populated with extremists, I'm going to give Dave Rubin's Locals a shot. I've started the sign-up procedure, but it's a monster. My community is still pending at TonyCaravanLive.locals.com. And whether or not they approve me or disapprove me doesn't matter. I think Rubin's got a good idea there. I notice Tulsi Gabbard has had some good things to say about it. And it seems to be refreshingly kind of positive. And that's the direction I've always tried to take this thing. While I try to take my shows in a direction of exposing what I call the corporatocracy, the fact that our political system is more influenced by corporations, like the big tech with their big data, big pharma, big ag, the war profiteers, and such the like. The idea is that there's still hope. We're still human beings. We still have five senses. We have consciousness and creativity that flows from that. And, there's hope because of that. And that's me in general. Now, I picked a good day to create this introductory video because I'm tired. It's a good thing I'm wearing these glasses, though. I normally don't. I do have the classic, iconic brand shirt on. And as you can see in the background, the usual Great Solar stuff, Game Over, and of course up top, everything you know is wrong, which is one of my mottos, along with the shirt I was wearing yesterday. You don't know what you don't know. So everything's going to be about the same today. And I just wanted to get that intro out of the way. So the best way to find out about me and this community is to watch, particularly say the last couple weeks worth of the videos on YouTube. And my channel on YouTube is Rock Flux.
So you found us.
What is it trying to tell us?
No strings, no catch. You own everything.
Now stay tuned to Rock Flux.
My brew for the day, and again, I am not monetized on this channel, and I'm certainly not sponsored by this company, but there's this product that it's hard to see. I'm going to give it a little bit of light. It looks like a Coca-Cola, but if you look closely at the bottom, it says coffee. And so, zero sugar, dark blend. I found it yesterday when I was at the supermarket, and it was just, I thought I'd give it a shot. And I'll tell you the truth, it's kind of in line with what I've been making on my own, just making instant coffee and adding various things to it. So, and it tastes good in the morning, Joe Bug. But as usual, today will be
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
so nothing's going to change. And I started the show at 5 a.m. It's 5:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States. I'm located in the Mid-Atlantic states. It's April 10th, 2021. And I guess for those who are interested,
Weekend weather.
the weather in my neck of the woods is it's currently about 54 degrees outside. I stuck my head out the front door. I'm in my front room of my house, and it's a little bit humid. It's a 54 and humid, and looks like it's going to be a cloudy day here for this Saturday. But it's going to get up to 72 degrees, 57 overnight. Sunday looks like thunderstorms, 60% chance of thunderstorms, 70 degrees and 50 overnight. And that's your
Weekend weather.
Of course, next week, Monday, it's looking like it's going to cool down. Now, I've already talked about this. I already have some things in the garden. They are cool weather crops. But Monday's looking 64, 48 overnight. Tuesday, 61, 45 overnight. And here's where it's starting to get scary. Wednesday, 55, 43 overnight. I just keep my fingers crossed that the temperature stays above 40. I put a thermometer in the soil about 2 days ago, and it seemed as if the soil was up to about 50 degrees, which means I should be able to take if we do get the 30s, which may happen. We do get a late frost every now and then, and whether or not that happens, I don't know. So that's about it. I think I covered everything I wanted to.
Let's get this show on the road.
I definitely need a little caffeine to get me started. But I've got to get out of this habit, even though I wasn't doing it for so long, and now suddenly I am. So the title card today just says the word community on it. And of course, that's inspired by what I just mentioned about this locals place that I'm kind of exploring. A friend turned me on to it. I've watched the Dave Rubin show sporadically, and I've heard him speak about it. In fact, particularly, I heard him speak about it once in an interview with Tulsi Gabbard. And but it wasn't until yesterday that I kind of went on their site and started to check it out and put some effort into signing up. But I have to tell you, like I said in my description, it's a monster. I mean, there's a lot of information, and I'll tell you, Dave, the sign up process could be a little bit easier getting it together. And I put up a post kind of self-describing myself, but I mean, it was like I guess it's a post, and it seems to be there. Now, whether it's visible to the public, I don't know. And I included a link to my YouTube channel, but that's coming up with an error. Now, I don't know if that's because it's just to a page that has a whole series of videos, or if that I would have to have just a link to a specific video. I don't know. And then I didn't notice a thing on there that where even though I was logged in, I could have edited that post, which to me is very important. And one of the downfalls of many of these other social media platforms, so to speak. Now, I don't know if you're calling this a platform or considering it one, in that, in regards to the other. I know a little bit about the history. I guess, this was a alternative to Patreon, perhaps. It seems I read something about that. Peterson's involvement with that. So, we'll see how it goes. You know, um, but you know, it, you're caught between a rock and a hard place these days because in one regard, you have that natural, like, y- part of your humanity that wants to reach out and and be with other people. We're pack animals, I guess you could call it. Herd, herd individuals, uh, which is kind of contradictory, I guess. But but we don't have those opportunities anymore. And it's not just this recent development over the past, year or so, with lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that, that's the proverbial nail in the coffin there. But social media over the past decade or so, since it's come along, has really taken people away from, social interaction one on one, or groups getting together, to this obsession with chatting, and using the what I call the black mirror. Um and as if that's some kind of, and social media, as if the word social applies in any way, shape, or form to Facebook, Twitter, those type of things. Because it doesn't. You're not being social. It's not really social. But so what do you do? Like I say, if it, it's, how do you reach out? How do you, you know, deal with like-minded individuals? Present your ideas or see what other people are doing. I know I lean on YouTube and I use YouTube for that. But, you know, that's about your only choice. And then everything, like I say, everything is wrong, or what you don't know, because you can't believe anything on the internet, at least not on face value. So you have to go to multiple sources to see if, the thing you read, or the person speaking, even someone like me. I mean, that's why I do these live things, because I try to just be straightforward, unscripted, and flow. So there's no preconceived ideas here. I'm not trying to, sway somebody. I haven't prepared anything. In fact, this morning I would have been on a little bit earlier, because I got up early today, like 3:30, quarter to 4. Um, by the time I got done shaving and splashing some cold water on my face, try to wake up, yeah, it was like 4 o'clock. But I was struggling with the title of the show. And so I decided to call it Community, because I checked on, excuse me while I move this mic a bit. And I noticed that it was still my community at this locals thing was still pending. So whether or not, someone like me is will be on there, or I can like figure. I also tried to, I set up Bitcoin, like a Bitcoin wallet, like years ago. Like, what I mean, literally in the very beginning. And if I'm correct, is Bitcoin up to 60,000 right now or something? I mean, that's ridiculous. If that's correct. But I was having it, like, I got these correspondences from, you know, from my wallet. Like, I know my wallet ID, and I and when I put in my password, it said success, but then it was saying like this isn't, you know, the right password. And you know what I mean? Everything starts it's like overly complicated. And understand the reasoning behind all of these things. It's just like this two-factor, security and all this stuff. It's because there are all these nefarious forces out there that want to, steal your identity and do all kinds of things. But at the same time, man, with the state of where we are technologically wise, you'd think we'd be able to have some of these security efforts operate in the background, you know, behind, you know, super firewalls. I mean, if I were one of these billionaires like an Elon Musk guy, or if these people at Google really cared, instead of, you know, in the case of Musk trying to go to Mars, like I say, like Alan Watts said, we're already out in space, way out in space. Or in a case of Google DeepMind trying to like merge man with machines and this AI, upload your consciousness to the cloud, which is ridiculous because the hard problem of consciousness, as Chalmers says, consciousness in the brain, that's still not resolved. This bioelectric brain, you may be able to conceivably someday, take a snapshot of all of that activity and what that activity does. But consciousness, your soul, your spirit is completely a separate thing. But yet you have these multi-billion-dollar companies or these billionaires working on these odd projects that do nothing for humanity, right? Putting a colony on Mars, what's the rationale behind that? To save the human species from, if it destroys itself on Earth or something? That's such a defeatist attitude, So you'd think that they would put these think tanks and these engineers and these great minds that we have now on improving the products and the digital tools that we have. It's like my criticism with this YouTube studio, the setup that I'm broadcasting live with through Google Chrome YouTube studio. Well, it's a very poor interface, as I said before. Yesterday, the live chat wasn't even showing up, but today it's magically there. There is no way for me to click on something and do a simple picture in picture. So on this part of the screen could be split and I can show you an image, like say, pull up the locals website for you to look at. And there are ways of doing that, but you have to go through third-party software companies and hope that that works with your particular operating system. And if you don't have the latest and greatest computer with all the DRAM and whatever quad processors and everything, it may not even work. So you may dish out $600 or $1,000 or be in some monthly plan, the new thing, pay by month cloud services. It might not even work. Works for some people, but yeah, they're the YouTube millionaires. So I put a challenge out there to coders. Make an extension for Chrome because you can have Chrome extensions. Make an extension that will put a button for people who are live streaming on YouTube so that just on there is a simple button that says PIP, picture in picture, and just simply splits the screen in half and just pulls up, you know, a file window where you can select a file, a JPEG or a, you know, PNG file or whatever, and place it there, and it'll appear in this half of the screen. And that could be also, maybe that could be, you know, live screen, you know, or the alternative would be, instead of seeing my ugly mug, this would be turned into my desktop, and I could just voice over while I show things. But I don't have that ability right now because the people who've created this thing have decided against that. Anyway, in the grand tradition of Tony Caravan Live, you know,
Quality, quantity, and variety.
Rock Flux.
Let's get this show on the road.
and the reason we hear that word rock flux repeated in all my promotions is because on YouTube, it's my rock flux is my channel. So if you though I'll tell you, I went to it. I used to go to, like, you can go to YouTube and type in rock flux in the search bar, and at the top it will come up rock flux. But when you click on the channel, it's like they've taken away my name as rock flux. But if you click on, you'll come to a home page, like they make you have this home intro video thing or something. There's one of my Western civilization videos or something. You know, it's just a random video because my videos are live and, you know, it's just free form stuff, unscripted, goofy, you know. We're 21 minutes into this and the show hasn't really begun. That's the way it goes. This is, you know, 2 hour stuff. But I wanted to show this. They're working on this street where I live. And I don't know if you can grasp the size of this device. This is one of those, you know, it's a giant, it don't actually look small there, which is sad. Maybe when you see the mountain, the hills in the background. But this thing is almost as big as a house. Here's one where you can see it with a truck. You see how it's bigger than that giant truck. And the reason I'm showing you this, I have another picture of this. Here's one where you can see, this is what I say, that this should automatically just be able to be, should appear on my screen. Right? Yeah, you see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying the software thing should do. But here's an example of one of these. It's granted, it's not the greatest, you know, picture because I'm holding up a smartphone to a, you know, a webcam. But look at the car in the background, which is basically almost next to it, and the size of that behemoth. Okay? Now we know we can electrify that car because we have electric cars. But you're never going to be able to electrify that piece of heavy equipment. And so, like I'm saying, and I've said in previous things, when you're talking about rebuilding infrastructure, in fact, there was another dump truck in front of that, and they were digging because they're trying to fix infrastructure. They're trying to dig out a sewage system and replace it. And so I took those photos yesterday because they're literally working out in front of my house. Oh, so I have a headache. I took an aspirin too. The pounding, this house is like 100 years old. And they're just digging into the ground, you know, through this street with these heavy equipment, right? And it was just an incessant pounding for like, you know, fortunately it's a weekend, but it was like 2 days in a row. And I think, and they're still like a little bit further down from my house, which means they're going to be right in front of my house, like, you know, this coming week. It's driving me batty. But, this is a topical thing. And another thing I want to get out of the way here, you know, for people who are new to my videos and me, is that I'm not political at all. Like, I've given up on politics completely, absolutely 100% completely. I will comment on issues of the day, but not from a partisan standpoint. And, and the idea is the game over hat. Try to put that back. Yeah, and by the way, like I say, the iconic image, everything you know is wrong. This is my brand. I'm the guy who has, his own branded clothing line. My latest book is Codex. And this is the one that deals with, the hard problem of consciousness. And it's basically, it's got me into this idea of this. It's been an inspiration for, writing this book inspired me to do these live flow of consciousness type videos, because that's where I'm headed. But for new people, somebody who's seen me before, I'm like, I'm out of breath because I've been like running around to get this thing ready, and now I'm just talking. I'm not taking a breath. But I've written like over 10 books. And I've mentioned before, like, you take this one, this one where I'm talking about climate change. At this point, I bought into certain things. And so I've changed over the years, as I've written various books, the nonconformist, that, like any individual, or at least you would imagine like any individual, if you have an open mind and you grow, you're going to be open to ideas. And so, you will investigate. You hear something that is counter to what you thought was the way it is, or way it was. And so you investigate further. You don't live your life, by looking at a headline on a news app or a meme or a post or a tweet. If something like that, sets off a light bulb or an interest in your mind, that's great. But go explore it, and don't go one place. Like I say, go to 7 sources, 7, because that's how untrustworthy the internet really is. That thing you see in the background, that Jackery, this great solar stuff, that's my site. And what I do is I review these products and I test them. I buy them and I test them. This thing you can plug in USB or any standard, like something you'd plug into a wall socket. The power's out, and you'll be able to power that device. If you go back several videos back, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago, I gave a pretty good review on that. And it holds its power. And you can recharge it by plugging it in a wall, plugging it into a solar panel, any kind of solar panel, just a cheap solar panel, or your car. And then there's this thing, which is like
highs in the lower 60s. Monday night, partly cloudy with a 20% chance of showers.
That's NOAA radio, but it's also AM, FM. And this thing has a solar panel on the top. I'm just trying to get it to reflect. You see how it reflects there? If you turn it up, it's got a reading light. It can also be wound charged. It's obviously a flashlight. And it also has, if I can get them reflected just right, a small USB and a larger USB you see under this thing to keep water from getting in there in case it's raining or something. And you can, in an emergency, if you keep this thing fully charged, either by solar or cranking it, you could charge your cell phone. This thing costs $35. And it works. Like I said, I took it out back and charged it in the sun. I just set it in the sun. It charges. And so that's kind of the stuff I do. But anyway, that's if you're wondering what that stuff in the background is. And I'm just trying to keep I'm sorry for the darkness today, but it's like I had this little headache, and you know how light sometimes. And I know what it is. It's just like I said, I'm a little bit stiff. I had between all that noise yesterday and so anyway, welcome to my
This is a nightmare. Must be a nightmare.
no, it's not really. It's
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
it's more like that. And like I always say, but that's more like my crowd. One or two people. And for those who that definitely new here, when I talk about the corporatocracy, what I'm saying is that in their minds, we're just cattle on a tax farm or in a consumerism farm. They're just selling us stuff. It's like the media. I sound like a broken record on this, but the media, they're just used car salesmen. Turn on any local TV station and they're going to be selling you cars right now. And if they're not selling you cars, they're selling you a pharmaceutical. And that pharmaceutical, a year from now, chances are you're going to see a commercial pouring in another one of these things. A commercial from a law firm telling you if you took this product or someone took this product and died or had serious organ damage and blah, 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 contact the law firm of blah, blah, blah and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's crazy, but I don't want to get too serious.
The station for more fun in the sun. Fun radio.
It's fun radio. I was looking at a friend of mine. Before I get further into this community thing, which is kind of the theme of the day. My grandfather, one of my grandfathers, came here, was an immigrant, came here in the late 1800s. All right. My grandmother was born here. Well, one of my grandmothers was born in 1900 exactly. And we don't know much about her because her and her sister were in an orphanage. So they were born and somehow put in an orphanage. So we don't know what happened to, so we don't know much about her background. My grandfather died many, many years ago. Obviously, having come here in the late 1800s. And when he died, he was a nice man. And I have fond memories of him growing up. Well, I was looking for something for a friend of mine, and I have some things, and I found this. Now, what this is I guess it's a fan, but what it is it's a fan. It's like one of these fans. This is 121 years old. So I don't know what kind of paper they used. Do you see? It says 1900. It's a calendar for the year 1900. That if you open it up, it forms a fan. Like I say, the old-fashioned. Well, like you see in a Japanese culture, a hand. Asian culture, even in general, the fan. But it's The Seasons, 1900. And that's his initials there. And I just found this. I was looking for something. I have in fact, I'm curious to see, let's see, April calendar 7. No. I was curious to see if the dates lined up, but no. Isn't that amazing? And this, you can't feel this, but this is all embossed. So the detail, see, I'm come from a printing family, and this grandfather wasn't my printer grandfather. See, my other grandfather around the turn of the century went from a grocery store, and then he used to print up flyers to distribute for his grocery store. I have a picture of that store somewhere. And people started liking his flyers and stuff so much, and his signs he'd put in his window of his store, that other businesses were saying, hey, could you make one of those for me? Blah, blah, blah. And he ended up realizing there was more money in printing, making signage and flyers and things of that sort. And he opened a print shop. And so my family has been, my brother to this day continues that legacy, and his son. So we're talking, grandfather, father. My father took over the print shop, my brother, and then his son. So, that's already 4 generations. And that's why I always have I have a background in graphics, and people have heard those stories before. But I always like to bring out a discovery. I was looking for a person I know has a business that they're looking to, like many people today, and this gets into this sense of community too, and this whole idea. A lot of people right now are just collecting unemployment, and that continues through to September. So there's really not a motivation for a lot of people to go hunt for a job right now. I mean, that's a sad reality. It's not, and I guess I'm not politics. I'm not into politics. I don't care, what side you come from. Human nature is human nature. And you take a 20-something person who's getting paid as much or nearly as much as they were making working. Nice weather's coming, especially when the summer comes. And all they have to do is go online and, and they get a deposit in their bank account of close to what they were making when they were getting in their car. See, even if you're not getting, some people in the first round were making more money to not work than they were if they would have worked, right? When it was like 600 on top of your unemployment. Now it's like only 400, but still, even if you were a lower waged person, you're probably making, about the same. But in effect, you're saving on gas, if you had to drive to work, and people who work sometimes they'll end up buying lunch somewhere or, or whatever. It's, so in effect, so there's no motivation for a lot of people to really go out there and work. And that may touch a few nerves on people who have agendas and, are into politics. But that's not why I'm saying it. I'm talking from realistic. So a friend of mine has a business, and he can't find anybody who wants to work. And like I said, and I have a relative who also has a business. It's the same way. And and it's not like they're offering minimum wage. They're paying above what the average they're offering people above what the average person would earn, and even offering incentives. But people just don't want to. Excuse me, people who've watched this show before realize my chair constantly falls down. That's what happens when you're not monetized. Excuse me. You don't have one of those, like, whatever they are, $600 or $1,000 gamer chairs or something. Instead, I've got a 20-year-old, office chair I've had forever. Even with the lights dimmed down, it's still like this left side. Maybe it's because I got these books reflecting. Okay, you saw my books. I've written 10 books. 9 of them available right now on Amazon in both print, digital, Apple Books, digital, Kindle. Of course, as I mentioned, I'm through Amazon, and they're all ISBN, Library of Congress type things. So they're available. You could even probably order them from a local bookstore. "50-beat poetry tracks. Couple of CDs. There's my mug. This one, not as good as this one. However, this one, while these tracks, the best of, the essential, are available from iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube and all that. This CD, it was through something that Amazon discontinued, Amazon on-demand media or something. So this is only available on CD. Makes no sense why they can't offer it digitally. This one, unfortunately, which was my first, venture, is available digital on Spotify and comes up first. But as I said before, being honest with you, it's my first attempt at it. And some of those songs just aren't good. This, by the way, this is another Tony Caravan ism. Not many people have these kind of mustache. So you got to wipe that coffee off there. The Louis Armstrong thing. And so, and before we get into this,
the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
So I found that fan from my grandfather because I was searching for these. I used to do business plans because I was a creative director of an advertising agency, and I was a general manager of a radio station, and I was a publisher, and I was a talent manager, and I used to be the production supervisor up at Columbia University for the Daily Spectator and the Law School Journal and the Columbia Guide to New York and the school for that high school for the performing arts, fame. I used to, and I used to oversee the production of all those publications up in New York. And I worked for Columbia. And I worked for this one's might be a turnoff, but it was right out of college. I would kind of worked for Roy Cohn in his final years down in DC on Capitol Hill. And that's where I learned that politics and politicians were all messed up. I talked about that in the previous video. So, over the year, and I've run other businesses, and I've been in California. I had, was doing things there. I mean, it's just a long story. You got to watch the body of my work, as I said yesterday, to really understand what, me. I'm a character. I can't help it. I'm one of those guys that have really lived life. And that's what I try. That's why I try to tell. And I lived it when I was young. And that's the thing. And I was watching a guy, professor, yesterday on YouTube, who was putting together his fall syllabus, whatever. And so he's doing this research on people under 35 and people under 25. And he was very, his research was coming up with that, these people were depressed. They were, it just, in other words, it wasn't a positive outlook for like, the people who are taking over, who technically are running society and will be are the future of society. Because guys like me, I'm like pretty much retired. Well, I am retired, I guess. I am retired. So, people, when I was that age, I was all over the place. I was living and working. I was flying to Australia trying to produce a movie. I was like flying over to England. I was working in New York City, DC, Center City, Philly, living in Malibu. Now, the part of the LA scene, and all kinds of parts in between. I was just doing stuff, and my sense of community and the people I knew, was in the thousands. Because everywhere I would go, I would get actively involved in things. And in many cases, I always seemed to rise to some kind of managerial, supervisory, or producer, or, the boss, so to speak. But I was a nice, I was a social guy, and I was a party thrower type of person. I wasn't a partier in the sense of, a waste. I was a hard worker. I put in long hours. But I was the classic guy who worked really hard, worked harder than everybody who worked for me. But I also, after work, was the guy who was at happy hours, or who, on Saturday night would probably throw a party. And I don't see that happening with a lot of people today. I mean, it's not that it doesn't. I mean, in a country of 320 million people and lots of billionaires and multimillionaires, there's all that. But I wasn't, that wasn't my scene. I was just, a guy, And so, a guy in his 20s, having fun, working hard, doing stuff, And always, I mean, and like I said, the goal is to find work that you enjoy and work with people that you like. This product is pretty decent. I wish I had another one, but I mean, I don't know what the level of caffeine, and I don't know why I'm even bothering looking at it, because I couldn't convert, what the milligrams really mean. I never really looked into that, because I'm not really a caffeine person. I just kind of, since I've been doing these morning shows, I've been experimenting. But the one day I just drank root beer, and it worked like, it's like the mental thing. It worked like the same way. It's just like, I need to have something. Of course, the morning show mugs. This is the metal one. I have a travel mug and a standard coffee mug you can get. TonyCaravanLive.com. Nobody's bought any yet. So this long story longer, when I found that fan, I was looking for a business plan, because I used to because of my travels and me being this guy, the lighting changes all the time on here. It's a morning show. It's 5:50 a.m. It's like, if the room was well lit, I don't have any staff. I'm here. This is me in my front room. I just happen to have this computer set up because that's my life has been involved in entertainment and, media and advertising and internet. Like I've said before, I was on the internet in 1985. Yeah, with the first I think it was called Easy Link or something weird like that. But I was sending emails to my brother. In fact, everything's in reverse on my screen. But let's just do this here. The flashlight. That's the poster from Mulder's basement office on the X-Files. And that's the original Mac. Okay, remember the classic Apple commercial? The 1984 type of thing. So yeah, I had that with a 300 baud modem, the dial-up, the weird noise. Almost sounded like when it did its handshake, it said hello or something. I used to have one of those things as a sound effects, but I don't have one now. Instead, I just have stuff like this.
I am your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man.
Yeah, it's more like me. You got to have a sense of humor in all this stuff. No matter how bad it gets, right? We still live in a beautiful world, like I said, and we still have our sense of humor. And one of the things this professor, just to get back to this professor who was very disappointed as he's putting together his syllabus for his class, was that, and he was, that we're talking about a serious college professor. I'm not going to name the guy, respect his privacy. But, he his research, he was saying research compiled over a million individuals, under the age of 35 and under, there were two groups he was looking at: people 35 and under, people 25 and under. And he was dealing with academic papers, published papers, research studies from around the world, from countries in Africa, Asia, South America, Europe, everywhere. And he was finding that, and that was another thing, that people thought they had a sense of humor, but they didn't. That they were basically unhappy. People, because this is, his idea, this is human behavior type of. And so when you get into, I've always been a student of human behavior. Particularly, because when you're in advertising, entertainment, trying the creative, a creative director, excuse me, it's hard to talk at 5:54 in the morning. You have to study human behavior. I used to tell people when they would come to work for me, I said, look, I'm at the ad agency when I was the creative director. I would say, look, we're in this business is not a good business. We're in the business of profiling people. People to us are just a demographic profile. And what we're doing is, our goal, if we're successful, is literally to convince, manipulate, force somebody to spend money on a thing that they probably don't need, you don't want, and shouldn't buy. But that's what the clients pay us to do, right? And the thing may or may not even be good for them, right? And so you study human behavior and you figure all that stuff out. You figure out what makes people tick. And that's the bioelectric brain. Forget the consciousness. And I've talked about in some other, recently within the past week or so, the subconscious, how the subconscious is the worst enemy of the human being. Because that's where indoctrination, propaganda, and manipulation comes in. All right. It's that, voice, excuse me. I do this all the time. It's live. I'm not going to cut this out. This is not edited. This is happening as is. When this is done, if you're watching this later on in the day, this is the way it was at 5:56 a.m. Okay. I am who I am. So what? I'm a human being just like you. You got to accept me as I am. That's what I'm talking about. That's important. A life of experience. Okay. That I'm trying to share with you. And I'm not making any money on this. I'm not monetized. Okay. Maybe if this local things works out, I don't even know, if it will. I mean, supposedly, allegedly, I have a high IQ and all that kind of stuff. But like I'm telling you, Dave, that your interface and that sign up thing, it needs to be streamlined, man. It needs to be streamlined. That's what I was trying to talk about, this Musk and Google and stuff. Why don't they put their efforts, instead of worrying about pie in the sky, going to Mars, or take, transhumanism and all this idiocy, AI. Okay. And we've talked about AI at length in previous episodes, and it's in my book as well. Why don't they work at coming up with streamlining things? And if there's people working for you at locals, why don't you guys think about that? In other words, things that can be, remember, I've been on the internet since 1985. I couldn't tell you. At one point, I owned about 60 domain names, and all of them, and all those websites were active. And I used to do websites for countless people. And I used to put business plans. That's how this whole thing started. Was I found this while I was looking for an old business plan that I had created for a restaurant for this guy who can't get employees because young people don't want to work. And that's how I'm on this tangent about this professor saying, and talking about this kind of thing. And it all ties into this sense of community, because the community is comprised, of all age groups. And people like me are, I'm, like I said before, I'm content with my life. I live alone with a cat. Okay. I don't happen to, my neighbor is like, I don't get along, it's an elderly person who's, who suffers from mental illness, put it that way. So I don't have that sense of community. On the other side of me is a doctor's office, which I'm friends with both doctors. So husband and wife doctor, whatever clinic or whatever it is they set up. I like them both. The male is the doctor I see. His wife, I like her. She's nice too. But that's it. Across the street's an empty lot. And there's a building next to that apartment building. It's empty. My mortgage, taxes, and insurance are under $200 a month. So I live in that kind of neighborhood. This isn't some upscale area. But it's okay. It's the main thoroughfare through the neighborhood. So it's somewhat safe, knock on wood. But it's, we've got, people of all flavors in this neighborhood, and so, And I don't, and like I say, that never bothered me because I've lived in the cities, you know. So it's, every race, creed, color, religion, and I'm sure, and not sure, but I know, back blocks back and whatever, because the, the cop cars are, so you have the drugs and you've got that kind of stuff going on in other, not too far from. So I live with the people. All right. And I'm retired here. I bought this house and I'm going to die in this house, probably, I'm a cancer survivor, knock on wood again. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm content living my life the way it is, living this way. And I have a backyard garden and I enjoy the sun and my music and doing this and sharing this information with you and my life. And then I watch these things back. So I'm creating content for myself. That's like, it's hard for people to understand, but I do that. And we just reached
The now sound. Another hour of music power.
minus the music. We're in the second hour. These shows these days usually go about 2 hours long. So if you want to watch the rest, put it on pause. If you got something better to do, come back to it. But I like this. I feed birds. A couple of days ago, I saw a rabbit in my backyard. And I was happy to see it because a couple of years ago, I had a rabbit that used to hang out there all the time. Just a wild rabbit. I have a small, relatively small house. The footprint of it is like 19 feet wide. Some people's living rooms are like 20 by something. Okay. So, and that 19 feet includes like, a couple feet outside the building. So it's this very thin house, but it goes back like 100 feet. So I have a yard, and in the backyard, I have an attached garage. I don't have a car. I don't have a license. I don't drive anymore because I can walk to a grocery store. There's a doctor next door, pizza shop down the street, convenience store up the street. There's a couple of bars, restaurants, and stuff like that. So I could get mostly what I want to. And I have a few friends that I know that, like a friend came down yesterday and we drove. Well, there's no dollar. I like the Dollar Tree. Went to the Dollar Tree. She took me up there because I can't walk to it. It's up a hill, like one of these like dangerous, windy, ridiculous hills. There's no walking path, and besides, it would be, well, it's just too far to walk, and you couldn't. You'd take your life in your hands if you even tried to do it, and it would be an all-day affair. It'd be like mountain climbing with cars wanting to, turn around the corner and knock you off the cliff. But there's a Dollar Tree up there, and some places like that, like a hardware store and stuff. But we just went to the Dollar Tree. We had a basket, just one of those carry baskets. And I've like, I said, get whatever you want, you got the car, you got the vehicle. So buy whatever you want. It's on me. And, there was things I was picking up, little things like, here's $1 duct tape. Here's some, their food, chives, chopped chives. I like putting chives in my soup. Just grabbing these little things, these dollar items in this Dollar Tree store, right? Not sponsored by anybody. Get to the checkout, and it was on, and I swear, it's like there were like 3 or 4 bags we carried out, but it was like $16.23. I mean, I thought we bought more than 16 items, but I mean, still, it's crazy. The way you can live, But yeah, I get a friend coming down doing that kind of stuff every now and then. We'll go somewhere. I have a little, instead of my kitchen, I've said this before, instead of having a island, they call it, in a kitchen, I have like a bar set up kind of thing. Not that I use it much, but once a month maybe. Friend comes down and have happy hour type of thing or something like that. But what I'm getting at is that I'm generalizing when I'm talking about this professor and this study that included like a million people around the world, young people, various walks of life, whatever. And he was very disappointed in it and quite downbeat, surprised in a not good way of the outcome of all these studies about these people. And like I said, when I was, from the age of 18 to 35, even 18 to 40, and I was a go-getter. I was out there doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, granted, I moved around so much, it was crazy because I just couldn't I was out there to grab all the gusto I could get. And when I mastered a thing or got to the highest point, then I left, Like I always tell the story, like at Columbia, when I was there, the place, the newspaper operation and all that stuff, which they don't publish a print edition anymore. They stopped doing that several years ago. But I mean, at the time, the whole production department was just out of control. It was mayhem, because there was I had a couple people, that were regular, people from off the street to perform certain tasks. But most of the people I had under me were students, because it was their student paper. So, the work of mainly I was just supervising, students, primarily the students. So, they needed to have a framework, but it was just out of control. But I mean, they did, obviously the paper existed for, I don't know how long it was there, 100 years maybe or something like that. But that production area was just out of control. So what I did was I organized it and made it run like a fine oiled machine. And I reached a point where it was so organized that I was no longer needed. I put in systems. That's the kind of person I am. It's just systems. And this is before we used things called a CompuGraphic. This is in the 80s. This is before, desktop publishing. We were using paste up boards, if anybody knows what that means. Probably not. In other words, you printed your stuff basically like galleys, of articles, and you had to cut them and cut and paste and design things using X-Acto blades. And then you took it into a dark room and you photographed it, made a negative of the page. And then that page was turned into a printer's plate. It was a whole, it was the art of printing, real, craftsman type of thing. And that's the part where I had to bring, I had students involved in the, photography and doing some of the camera work and stuff like that. But I still had to have some outsiders come in to do some of the typesetting and certain things. But it got to a point where I just organized it in such a way that I found myself just like sitting at a desk or standing around, and I was going out and having like long lunches. I was watching going to the movie theaters. It's New York City, Upper West Side. I was like going to the movie theaters in the afternoon. I mean, I was a salaried employee. There was literally nothing to do. So I basically put in my resignation. I said, people said, why? I said, because they look at you, people who have those type of things, it's like a dream job, But I'm going like, no, I said, there's no challenge here anymore. I said, I can't just I'm not going to sit at a desk. There's no, this thing is working. So this woman who was like my head typesetter, I just told her, I said, hey, look, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice, and I'm going to recommend that you take over my job. And she was like, wow, But I said, you're more than, And so what it basically meant for her, she would do the same thing and just get like a raise, big raise. But it was great. I mean, I was at Columbia, and, when you work for the university, I could take free classes. I had free healthcare, Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, discounts on books in the bookstore. I mean, that was like a big deal when you got your Columbia ID. But I walked away from it. But I had fun, And then I moved on to something else. And I did the same. I was general managing a radio station. When I took it over, it was a nightmare. And I not only like organized it, changed format, and I literally physically was involved in like repainting and structuring building a conference room and redoing the production studio and all that stuff. And I turned it into a fine oiled machine. And I put in my notice. I said, the station's just working now. And my general sales manager, this woman, I said, I'm going to put in my notice, and I think you should just, be in charge. I said, this is no need to hire another person to replace me. I'm going to, I'll recommend you just do it. And I left that job, but I left it in better condition than it was when I got there. And I did that in California, did that, Philly. And that's how I moved around a lot. And that's the type of guy I was, a problem solver. And so eventually I ended up like doing at agency work, advertising agency work, because I had built and solved so many problems in business that the natural thing was to be a consultant to help other people with their businesses. And so when I was looking for some of these business plans that I made, I found this thing from 1900, a keepsake that when my grandfather died, they gave me. It's interesting. 1900. It's 121 years old. Over 121 years old. It's not really faded all that much. I mean, it's faded. It no longer like really easily opens into a fan. But the illustrations, knowing from a printer's standpoint, how these things were created. And this idea, like I say, you can't do it, but this is embossed, these flowery things and whatever. And all that the printing there, the calendars on each part of the fan. The ribbons like that hold it together, completely. That's why it doesn't really open right, but 121 years. So I found a half dozen business plans I made for people, executive summaries, all these things. And I'm trying to show it to this guy who has this business in town who's having problems with young people wanting to work for him, or anybody. In fact, the only people working for him are older guys, right? And and I was trying, and I've been trying to push with them. I'm saying, look, you're going to have to put an ad in the paper and hire a manager. And this guy's like 60 or something himself. I said, you just need to retire and get out of there. Because what happens is he's working 7 days a week, full time, and he's going crazy, and his health is it's affecting his health. I was trying to convince him, if you are someone who has a business, that you have to hire a manager and you have to trust people. I said, you hire him, you put it on that paper. Someone who has experience in your, business area. I said, you get 3 references. You do a background check, that kind of stuff. I said, that's not hard to do today. That's the easiest thing in the world to do because there's no privacy. You could pay $25 on the internet and get that kind of thing done or whatever. I don't know. I mean, you have to double check because half the stuff on the internet is just lies, But yeah, that's a real problem. So when you look at the next generation taking over, I did all the fun stuff under 35. And what this professor was saying, and what I'm getting anecdotally from not only this guy I talked about yesterday when I found the fan, but from relatives who have businesses and other people, because I've consulted businesses. I used to do a dining entertainment guide right towards the end, up till a few years ago. So I knew a lot of people who had restaurants and bars and clubs and stuff like that too, which predominantly hire younger people, lots of them, and who younger people would frequent. So they had their finger on the pulse of youth, so to speak. And I would immerse myself I would go to these places because, this is 7 to 10 years ago when I was at the height of that, doing that thing. But I'd go to these places and I'd sit at the bar, because I'd work all day and then I would go out for happy hours. And it's like this, it's 6:00 in the morning, but, and I'm, technically I'm working, so to speak, but I mean, I always got up early. So it was like that old Army commercial, I'd do more before 6 a.m. or whatever, or 8 a.m. before most people, than most people did an entire day. And it's still like that kind of, I'll get up early, do this, do other things, take care of, things around the house, and then suddenly it'll be like, it's only 10 o'clock. It's like, now what do I do? Right. But those were the 35 and under years are the years that I really experienced life and did all that stuff. And like I say, maybe I moved around more than most because I was a character. I was the type of guy who was like a problem solver guy. I'd come in, I was a heavy hitter. I got to admit that, I never, any job I ever applied for, I got. I never was fired from a single job, and I never had a position where I wasn't successful at, where I didn't leave a place, in better shape than it was before I was there. Improved its operation. And I'm not just touting my horn there, tooting my horn, whatever. It's just the way it is. And so we don't have that thing going on right now. And that's why, like I say, and I brought up those books and stuff to say that I'm not political, But that's not to say that I wasn't political, you see, and that I've changed political viewpoints and ideological viewpoints. You know, I've argued things in both directions. You know, and that's hard to believe too, right? So, but that's what life is like, and those are things that you work out when you're young. But this another thing with this social media thing now, and with the memes and this polarization, why I say that the U.S. empire's fallen, the former United States, Western civilization is like collapsed. Because when you can't reason with the average person on Twitter anymore, you know? This thing popped up from YouTube. That photo's from, I used to be involved in expeditions to Antarctica, the Himalayas, and the North Pole. So when I showed you those pictures of those, I always circle back and go all free flow of, flow of consciousness. One of the things ideologically that I've changed on is this idea of that there are a lot of people who are concerned about the planet and climate change. And they talk about, and I was one of them, okay? And like I say, and even in one of my books, I was like, I'm driving that home. Global warming is a big problem. But I spent years, working with people and doing things. And I discovered things like I always, and again, I don't want to come off as an ideologue here or like, this is political because this, you can't be touchy about issues. When someone presents something to you, remember, first, there's nothing like firsthand knowledge. Secondhand knowledge, thirdhand knowledge, things that go viral, memes and posts and tweets and even YouTube videos by people that are saying something secondhand or thirdhand. No, you got to go to the source, the individual, the person who was there. I showed you a picture of these giant, what they call heavy equipment, these things that dig out roads, dump trucks. All right. These things can't run on batteries and won't. That's not to say maybe 100 years from now, somebody's going to create some kind of thing the size of a, vitamin bottle that might do that. But no Tesla battery or anything like that is going to run that kind of heavy equipment. And there's a move right now to like push infrastructure in the US, rebuild our infrastructure. And it's going on out there. By the way, my headache's gone. Great. Thought I'd share that with you. So, and CO2 is a greenhouse gas, which means they pump it into greenhouses so it greens it, and it greens the planet. We green the planet, that increases crop yields, and the greening of the trees and everything else produces more oxygen. So we're provided with more crops. We could feed more hungry people, and we have fresher oxygen, and the plants thrive. Yeah, that is driving people crazy. I just said that. The magnetic North Pole is moving towards Siberia. The magnetic South Pole has actually left Antarctica. The parts of Antarctica that have melted because of geothermal activity underneath the continent. You can still go to the so-called physical North Pole, the imaginary North Pole. And there are people still taking tours there, walking on the ice. They camp on the ice. They actually have fires on the ice on the Arctic Ocean. All right. We're entering a grand solar minimum. The planet is actually cooling. And because of our weakened magnetic field of the Earth and the sun solar cycle and its weakened magnetic field, we have seen an uptick in volcanic activity, which puts more volcanic ash in the atmosphere, which also cools the planet. The conveyor, as we used to call it in the Atlantic, has been slowing down. Okay. These are cyclical things. They're grand cyclical things. There are things known as El Nino and La Nina. All sorts of things that just really aren't talked about. Academics and bureaucrats who work at the UN and the IPCC, they're paid by people. The media latches onto these things. People put out memes, people put out posts, but they're not giving you the background. They weren't there on the location. The average person hasn't flown hundreds of thousands of miles in the air like I have and seen how green the planet is. Okay? Are they chopping down parts of the rainforest? Yes. And have I known and worked on expeditions in the rainforest, Amazon? Yes. Do I have videos and things like that of the Amazon? Yes. But that's not our problem. Okay? That's not the worst problem we have in this. It's like George Carlin's put it best. He goes, look, we don't have to worry about saving the planet. It's the people that need saving. All right? We have a people problem right now. The planet will do just fine. You know, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, Mother Earth. Human beings have to worry about getting themselves and their own lives in order. All right? The planet will exist beyond us. It's existed for 4.5 billion before us, and it will exist for I don't know how many billions of years after us until the sun becomes, a red, whatever it is, dwarf or whatever extends too close that we eventually billions of years from now, the planet just, disintegrates. That sounds controversial to some people, but it's not. It's just, it's just part of my life's work. So, but be forewarned. The sun's going through a cycle, and this is reality. Now, whether you believe that or not, that doesn't matter. The point is, life is beautiful. Look at the sunrise. Look at the sunset. Breathe in some fresh air, morning fresh air. Use your senses, not virtual reality. Okay? Don't spend hours on social media. Okay? All right? Realize that it's a beautiful planet right now. Okay? Realize that heavy equipment that I showed you in the picture, that's never going to be run on batteries. If we continue on this path of trying to blame humans and cows for some imaginary thing, okay? Watch my previous videos where I get into how they take the temperature. They say the planet's heating up because they take it on tarmacs at airports where jet engines and black asphalt, where it's the hottest places naturally, and in cities with HVAC systems, high concentrations of buildings, peoples, and parking lots and stuff like that. All right. Satellite, that the surface of the ocean is hotter than the real water is. Okay. The reality, since the Cold War, half the cold reporting stations from the former USSR that used to be included in the overall science mix of the planet are no longer reporting because the USSR doesn't exist. All we have is Russia, a country that doesn't even have half the population of the US or something like that, or maybe 2/3. It's just a country now. All right. We should be more worried about two things: getting rid of nukes on this planet. All right. And finding out if this thing, this plague, is a bioweapon. And if it isn't or is, still, the fact that we've uncovered the fact that these are virology bioweapons labs, there should be outrage, and these places need to be closed down immediately. We've got enough problems that the fact that we're upgrading nuclear systems that we need to be like pursuing bioweapons, right? And then we have this problem of those who are taking over the world. And I have a shirt, like I say, I've got all these branded shirts because I do, my clothing line, TonyCaravanLive.com. I have one called Then What with a question mark. These people pushing this stuff. Both sides. The cult of personality. Politics has become pop culture, right? The media parroting whatever the corporatocracy, big ag, big pharma, big tech, big data, the war profiteers, right? The central bank, feds, the UN, IPCC, EU, World Economic Forum, the Davos set. We need a great reset. We don't need a great reset. We just need to get our houses in order. We just need to fix the things that are broken. We don't need to reset anything. All right. Great reset. Then what? What's going to magically happen? Oh, let's get rid of all fossil fuels. Then what? Well, what are you going to do? How are you going to fix the infrastructure if you can't use the heavy equipment? How are you going to harvest farms, crops if you can't use that heavy equipment? They don't run on batteries, right? The U.S., if we keep on the path we're going right now here, we're going to be importing oil within 6 to 18 months. We're going to be importing twice as much oil as we were importing 10 years ago if they want to do these types of projects. Windmills, that was a major mistake. They just need to admit the whole concept of windmills was pushed by that T-Bone Pickens guy. It was a mistake. They're just not productive. They crash, they burn, they kill birds, and the utility companies abandon them after about 15 years. Can they be maintained and last longer? Sure they can, but it's not in the interest of utility companies. Remember, we live in a corporatocracy. The world is a corporatocracy. Politicians are just marionettes. The corporatocracy, they pull the strings of everybody. The media, they're just selling, cars, right? And drugs and whatever. Soft drinks. Okay? Wake up to reality. That's the way things are. And these little memes and posts and headlines on your news app, because people won't read, they got the attention span of a goldfish. They don't look further. Or I say something and they look on Europe and it's there, or look on the internet and there's like something, the first thing up there supports their idea. Well, of course it does, because that the corporatocracy is paid to have that come up first, right? It's pay to play. That's how Google works. That's their business model. It's part of their business model, that and data collection like Facebook, demographic profiling everybody, predictive behavior, so they could better sell. The private sector corporatocracy has made the CIA, the NSA, the DIA, FBI, and all the other alphabet agencies you don't even know about obsolete. Facebook and Google collects more data and has better profiles of the entire, American public than the CIA, NSA combined. Right? And that's why the CIA and NSA want to get involved with all that. I mean, the CIA is housing their data on Amazon servers. Okay. So in other words, big data has access to that information. People just don't understand. It's like that other shirt I have. You don't know what you don't know. And in many cases, everything you know is wrong. So if you want to get, your house in order, first understand those truths. And remember, when somebody's out there with a protest sign, it's an exercise in futility. My question is, okay, whatever you wrote with that magic marker on that piece of cardboard that you're holding up, then what? Okay? Well, my advice to you is start living life. Start using your 5 senses. See that we're living in a beautiful world. Get your house in order first, and then we'll work together to solve these big problems, the big questions. All right? Like getting rid of nukes, getting rid of these bioweapons labs, and dealing with other things. Fossil fuels, carbon, we're a carbon-based civilization, okay? We will be for 50 years, maybe 100 years. It's not going to turn the planet into a sun. We have more problems with the possibility in the next 25 years of a solar outburst, which seems to be evidenced in archaeology, ice core samples, tree rings, all right? Even anthropology, that we have these cyclical, catastrophic events that seem to happen on this rock. That's why I call it rock flux, where this rock hurling through space, being dragged by the sun, why they worshiped it as a god, because without the sun, there is nothing. The sun controls the weather. It controls the climate, controls everything. It's the giver of life. All right. And we're on this rock, right? Hurling through space in a state of flux. And we have axial tilt, and it gives us seasons. And there's a thing called precession and these grand cycles. And depending on where we are at what time, and over these long periods of time, some people call it deep time, things happen. So, let them worry about the planet. Be aware, but don't worry about it. That's not our number one priority. Our number one priority is watching these authoritarians,
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Roosevelt said it there. Fear-mongering, these people who are fear-mongering people now. People are scared to death. And then they're just pushing more. Everything is like to scare you. Climate change, the plague, right? It's like before, all the troops that we lost, and all the injuries and all the suicides over 20 years of terrorism pursuit. And these people dying of opioid drug addictions and overdoses. Why didn't we put the Moab, the mother of all bombs, when they did that thing to scare the Taliban? Why didn't they drop that on the opium fields, the poppy fields in Afghanistan, the number one producer of opium? You ever think about that? And just say, okay, that's end of that. Well, Big Pharma wouldn't have that, Most of the governments are basically, they're run like organized crime syndicates. I mean, that's what the Davos said is. That's what the World Economic Forum is. It's like an organized crime syndicate. Great reset? We don't need no reset. We don't need a reset. Think about it. Well, what reset? We just need people getting their house in order, getting things, thinking sensibly, reasonably. That, get your life together. We have a generation of people under the age of 40 who aren't doing things. It's a generalization because there's many people doing a lot of wonderful and incredible things. And there's no doubt about it. And just like I say, this is a beautiful big planet. And there's problems here, problems there, problems here. But those things aren't going to be they're nothing to be, feared in a sense of like apocalyptic dystopian fear. Okay. The apocalyptic dystopian fear is the authoritarian takeover by the corporatocracy. That's what you need to fear. And the fact that the majority of younger people are just lost. They're, it's like, okay, you get rid of student debt, then what? Right? They say, get that shirt or hoodie and wear it. Let people look at it and look puzzled. What do you mean, then what? Or you don't know what you don't know. Or who's that guy? Everything you know is wrong. And that's the whole thing. People just don't, they just don't see reality. They don't see, the beauty of the planet, the beauty of life. I don't know what today is. I gave the weather before. It looks like it's going to be cloudy. I'm not happy about that, because that means more to me than a lot of this other stuff. A sunny day is a big deal for me. If it's a sunny day, I'll go out in my backyard. I'll put the lounge chair out, put on some music, and lay back and get a tan. Soak up some vitamin D. Feel good. Listen to some music or listen to the birds chirping. Maybe do some planting or fiddling around in my garden. And feel really well. The beauty of nature. Feeling it with my full sensory experience, feeling the sun on my body, my skin, right? Using my eyes to look at the birds and rabbits and my little solar fountain in my mini pond and enjoying the sight of that, or watching these seedlings that have grown more that I planted from a seed, looking at my apple tree budding from an apple that I ate 4 years ago and put the seed in the ground and it's grown, right? Listening to the birds chirping. Smelling the fresh, clean air of my backyard. And later on, picking some lettuce or a tomato or something from my garden and tasting that. The five senses, right? Life is about that's why we're here. That's why we have them. That's what it's all about. And yet people don't really deal with those senses. Life is about experience, and our consciousness experiences life through the full sensory experience, not putting some VR thing on, or not sitting here, with the magic mirror on the wall, texting to somebody, some social media experience, right? Or some perverse thing, just like eating a bunch of junk food, using for flavor, right? One of the studies was these kids weren't even having, had lost like love, like didn't have real love and relationships, emotional relationships. In other words, it was like sex was just sex among people under 35. Right. And so, the idea of not having that, intensity of being one with a person, beyond, the orgasm, if you want to call it that. The idea of wanting, of falling in love, taking that chance, going for it. That's not happening. That's another from this study of, like I say, millions worldwide. This isn't like just some US thing. So many of these things had come in. This is pre-plague, by the way. Many of these studies were like 3 years ago. Questionnaires, various psychology, behavioral scientists, reporting on this kind of thing from around the world. Interviews. So, you can't blame it on say, oh, the lockdown, people are afraid of this or afraid of that. No. This is a trend that has been going on before this thing. This thing's just, like I said, it's a nail in a coffin. So, that, to me, that should be the primary concern is, do we want, what kind of world is it going to be? What kind of society? The fall of Western civilization, the end of the U.S. having irreconcilable differences, red states, blue states, conservatives, socialists, liberals, right? Republican, Democrat, social justice warriors, this, that, the other, people afraid of words or labels, right? When you're old enough like I am and you lived through the original civil rights movement and the feminist movement and stuff, and you celebrated that all that stuff happened and it was over. And in the 70s, we were all, all one, and now these people resurrect it just to divide people, and people are all caught up in this thing trying to like recreate something that, guys like Martin Luther King gave their lives to end, and it's being, and the news media is just using it as content so that they could sell cars, keep people binge watching, stay tuned during the commercial, and the pharmaceutical companies are selling their drugs to people because they buy this drug if you have a rash, but it could kill you or cause organ failure. The testing thing they're doing now, it's become a $91 billion industry. Think about that. They've turned this plague thing into a $1 trillion industry. Look at the trillions of dollars that are being sucked up by the corporatocracy. It's not going to the people. The people got a pittance, of that. The rest is going to the corporatocracy. The people pulling the strings of the politicians and the bureaucrats. These are things that people should be worried about. And, when you have schools that have more administrators than teachers, and that those administrators have failed, I was watching like this show, this Criminal Minds thing, which I don't really watch TV shows, but I was desperate to find something to watch on Netflix. So I can't stand commercials. So I do watch a series out of boredom. I'll find something on there. And there was one particular episode where they were saying that the worst thing that ever came out of the school system was this idea about something stranger, like thing where they had kids believing that, just be afraid of some spooky stranger type of thing, but that, these people who are FBI profilers and people that see abductions and things like that, that the real problem, what they should, by making kids think it's going to be some scary monster person that they have to look out for, which they do, and they should, but that in most cases, it's some guy walking a dog or some, happy-go-lucky, regular-looking person in the neighborhood or somebody like that who's abducting these people. And so they say that set back, that whole thing, it caused irreparable damage because kids were being abducted by, some guy walking a dog, or something like that, because they weren't afraid. They were looking out for such and such stranger. I forget the specifics about it. But I'm saying that's why these, like I say, those are the problems that should be addressed. Get rid of the administrators. When I went to school, all we had was a principal, a vice principal, a couple people working in the office, a janitor, and the gym teacher was the football coach. And we all turned out just fine, and we built a beautiful country. Now they've got hundreds of administrators, messing with kids' minds, saying, oh, do this, let's revise history, let's do this, let's do that, whatever. Overthink, right? It's all messing with the subconscious. It's all indoctrination, conditioning, and all that kind of stuff. It's messed up. It's child abuse. And that's why we're in this situation now. But life's about love, falling in love, right? Experiencing life, the full potential of your being and your senses, and realizing you're a conscious being, I mean, that's a big deal. And that you can be happy, and it's a beautiful planet. And there's so many things that you can do and become, and that, dreams are possible, and you can have dreams. Dystopia is a reality, right? Under authoritarianism, and there are many parts of this country, Europe, and the world that are basically dystopian nightmares already. Like I talk about, it's a horror show, surrealistic nightmares, right? It's theater of the absurd when you turn on a television or look at the internet. But that doesn't have to be the way it is. And it doesn't have to be the life you live. See, you're free to do and make decisions for yourself. You don't have to spend 2 hours on Twitter arguing with somebody who you're never going to change their mind, or getting, or like this whole idea of preaching to the choir, gathering followers, right? Joining these various trains or things they call them, getting more and more likes and getting some dopamine hit from it. That's what's that doing for you, for your life? And if you think that little mini dopamine hit is something, oh wow, I just got 100 new followers, or wow, my tweet just went viral. I got thousands and thousands of people saw my meme. Well, let me tell you something. That little dopamine hit that you just got from that is nothing like being in love with someone and just waking up on a Sunday morning next to them and staying in bed, for, half the day, right? Or going out in nature and experiencing things and the beauty of nature. Like I say, the beauty of another human being. The sights, the sounds, everything, People just don't see that today. And the media is against it. The politicians are against it. The corporatocracy doesn't want it. See, happy people don't buy things, like waste money on things. Like I always say, at least me and my generation, if you go back and you say, what are some of the happiest moments you ever had in your life? Right. And if you're a parent or something like that, I'm not, but I've talked to plenty of parents, and including my own. about it. And I've seen it through, I have, relatives who have kids. So I've seen kids around and how they've been happy. You can have a kid sitting on the floor playing with like pots and pans, banging them together or something like that, laughing. And that child is in a state of pure happiness, right? With just nothing, nonsensical things, right? Not even a purchased toy, just like pots and pans or some things that are just there, right? You know what I'm talking about. And at that time, that kid was happy, as happy as it could be at that moment. Just like it would be happy, being held by its parent, if it was in a younger stage, being comforted or just hanging out, right? And, when you get older, when you fall in love and you're out on a date somewhere in a park or a field or someplace, and there's nothing around you. This is prior to, like I say, prior to the magic mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all. You didn't have anything with you. It was just you and your girlfriend or whoever. And you're just talking, walking, stop somewhere, kiss, maybe make love. You had no cell phone, no social media. You were just in love and happy and sharing life and connecting with another human being. And like I say, I've worked with many adventurers, people who've climbed the summits, the 7 summits. And I've had them call me from a satellite phone and say, and I'll in future shows, because I have those audio files saved. And somebody calling me and saying, Tony, man, I just reached the peak. You can't imagine what it's like up here. This is just a guy alone who just, hit the peak of, Cho Yo or one of these Himalayan mountains. And he's in this state of ecstasy, He said, you just can't imagine what it's like here. It's just the most beautiful thing in the world. This guy climbed this mountain and there he is at the top. And pulls out the satellite phone and calls me. Of course, I tape it because I used to do that. And I used to take these dispatches from these explorers and post them so people could track, their progress and stuff on the web. This is back in the 90s. I used to do this. That. Like people who go hiking or people who go down, rafting. All the things that people do in nature, we still have that beautiful planet. It still exists. It's not going away like these people say, oh, if we don't do something, as if humans the planet's going to self-destruct in 8 or 10 years or even a couple of decades. It doesn't happen that way. All right. They've been saying this forever. In the 70s, we were supposed to be freezing, right? Al Gore's thing was like 2004, almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago. Stuff never came to fruition. Look, we got bigger problems to deal with. The problem is the future generation, the people who are going to take over. What are they going to be? Is transhumanism the way it's going to go? I mean, are these people already robots? These appendages, these cell phones and social medias become their appendage. So they might as well just take the Neuralink Elon Musk thing and have a hole drilled in their head so they could become one with a machine and some kind of AI. Was that where we're headed? I mean, it's crazy. People don't think. They're unconscious. People are like zombies. I don't know, man. It's crazy. And I think it's something that a lot of people need to think about. Anyway, I'm going to end it there. So,
Good morning.
for those who have stayed with me, thanks for watching. For some reason, my chat seems to be working, though no one chatted. But that's that. And like I say, I'm going to explore this locals thing. You know, I don't know where that's going to go. We'll see what happens. This is my promo. I don't know they'll accept the 2-hour introduction or not. If anyone's going to want to watch 2 hours, I enjoy it. I will watch this 2 hours because it's content, and there's not much good content on there. And I enjoy the way my brain, works and, goes through these, flow of consciousness and connecting the dots and that kind of thing. It's fascinating. It's interesting. So it's what I do. I hope it has served some purpose for you. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. And I'll talk to you probably tomorrow.